Welcome to this week's Pascal's China Lens. And for the next 6 weeks, I'm going to share all the trends that I see in 2021 that will happen in China. I'm going to start in this episode to talk about the consumer trends, so what is happening in consumption and consumer industries. Next week, we're going to talk about business trends. And so do subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so, because there's going to be a lot of trends for China for 2021 that I will reveal, my trends that I believe will happen, that I will share with you throughout these episodes. So what's happening in consumer land in China? There's 6 trends that I see that we could look at, but all of them relate to the consumer having a new experience, looking for a new purpose, looking for more trust in the quality of products they buy and the services they get, and also meaning in their life. Now, if you look at the individual, the person themselves, the Chinese consumer, what you see is that in the past, it was all about convenience. China was the place most convenient in the world to buy things with new retail, social e-commerce, and all these things. That was really exceptional. It was so easy life as a consumer in China. But now it's much more about the purpose. It's not just about having an easy, comfortable, convenient life to buy things. It's also about why are we buying? And this, of course, was related a lot because of the pandemic. People got stuck at home like everywhere else in the world. There was lockdowns in February and in March in China. And so that rat race that Chinese were in for the past many years suddenly stopped. And it halted, which means that for the very first time, Chinese understood that there is something more to life, and they were looking for more happiness and health. Just like with us, but happiness was a lot to do with do things that you like. It was like getting a dog or a pet, and the pet industry is a big trend in China, but also cooking, learning to cook, because that was always eating out and getting deliveries. Now that's changing. And then also, what are you buying and what are you doing? And is your health really good? And so when it comes to the products, you saw that a lot of green products, let's say vegetables, fruit, a lot of that became about organic and biological, and now the big trend for 2021 will be the start of artificial food. So all these trends are happening within that area, and also of course healthcare products. And so all this is changing for Chinese to have a better and happier life. Now the other thing that changed is that all of these Chinese people, many of them, were trying to express to the world online when they were in lockdown what their life was about. And so this created this acceleration of this new video streaming trend. The past years we've seen a lot about influencers and key opinion leaders, KOLs, like we call them in China, with millions of followers. I mean, really changing e-commerce completely. But today what you see is that there's a lot more pockets of KOCs. These are influencers with about 1,000, 2,000, a few thousand followers, but they tell a very authentic story. They tell a real story that people are interested in, their personal experiences. And so they get a lot of followers, a few thousands of them, that really trust these people, these normal people like you and I, everybody in China, to tell their story. And when they say you should buy this product or buy this service, they actually believe them as if they were family or friends. And so what we see is this whole trend of KOCs is disrupting the market, because now every brand needs to personalize their stories through the people that work for the brand rather than create marketing messages. Big trend for China, going to go global. The other thing is, of course, the social aspect. This is the we of China. And China has been culturally for a long time a very much about friends and family. The cultural aspect from Confucianism from 2,500 years ago was really all about that. But now that social, with social media being very strong in China, specifically on content creating, became social commerce. And so that started a few years ago, but now we see that this is really accelerating, where people are helping each other that know each other to get better deals. The company that's been very efficient and very successful in the past years is called Pinduoduo. I made a great video about that on YouTube to explain what the real value is of this company. And what they did is they combined a concept of Disney entertainment with Costco, which is about low price and lots of volume, lots of choice of products. And so the combination of those two was quite interesting because this all happened in an e-commerce online environment. And so Pinduoduo and many other companies in China are now going into what we call social commerce, which is about trying to find your friends online and family and people that you know, create these private pools, and then convince them to buy things online through platforms like Pinduoduo in a very gamifying way, like what Disney would do, so very entertaining. So it's all about fun and getting better deals and doing it together. That extended into the offline world, which is the other trend that is happening in China. And this is where retailers, physical retailers, were introducing the digital world from outside, the social and commerce and live streaming, all these things that you knew, into their stores. A company that did that, one of the first ones was Burberry, together with Tencent, which is the biggest social media of China. And what they did together is actually to create an interactive experience in the store where it's like a game, it's like fun, it's like informative, but it's also social. You can connect, you can share. I mean, anything you expect in an online environment, that is what you can find if you go into that store and get a lot of benefits out of it. So this is a really interesting concept. You'll see IKEA and many other brands following this, working together with a big social media partner to actually create that in the online environment. And the store is becoming an entertainment place. Now, if we look at the nation in general, looking at consumers' perspective, what we see is that the Chinese, who were always very much looking for opportunity and very pragmatic people that are trying to get better deals and better opportunity, is now shifting into more awareness. This is a big trend for China. It means that Chinese are becoming more proud, and that is to do a lot with the tensions between the West and China and the way that we handled the pandemic. A lot of Chinese feel like we didn't do it that bad, and so the Chinese citizens, the Chinese consumers, somehow feel that we should be more proud of our own culture, our own people, our own brands. And this created a buying local direction and trend, which we see everywhere in the world. But it's not so much that the governments needed to say we should buy more local and so on, and local retailers were shouting out, you should buy from us. No. This was the opposite direction. This was about the consumers that wanted to buy more local to show that they are actually proud of their nation, proud of what China has achieved, but also the designers, which is called guochao in Chinese, so Chinese design, were creating a lot of new designs and people were buying them. And so we're seeing this trend where you have to localize in China. And for foreign brands, this is going to be a big trend for 2021, because unless they localize to understand what the Chinese culturally want as a consumer, it's going to be very, very hard to sell into China. We need to understand the Chinese much more. Otherwise, they're going to go for local brands, which are offering better quality now as well. The other thing, and last thing in this trend of consumers, is that people, the Chinese consumers, have created more awareness because of the pandemic. And so in 2021, we'll see a lot more awareness towards both the good and the bad. The bad is companies taking advantage of consumers. One of them was Danke. It's kind of almost a Ponzi scheme into the real estate of renting out apartment business. Very tech company, but a lot of people got burned, and now the social media is all around it saying, yeah, we shouldn't trust these big tech companies or big companies or brands just like that. We should really look into them. The other thing is what we call in the West fair trade. And this is about the consumer wanting to do good for society, good for the people, specifically for the Chinese, like farmers in this case, that had a hard time during the pandemic because they couldn't get their products to the consumers. So what they did is these farmers started live streaming their products and their stories and their origin and why they should buy from this farmer. And they did that online through platforms like Pinduoduo or on WeChat and lots of video streaming platforms like Kuaishou. And they got direct contact with the with the buyer, and the consumer could buy directly from this farmer. And so what happened is the whole middleman and this distribution channel between the buyer and the seller is actually getting disrupted. And so the consumers and the producer are getting much closer to each other, which helps to create more awareness for the consumer what they're buying. So to summarize these first consumer trends, it's a lot to do about purpose, it's a lot to do about trust, it's a lot to do about meaning that consumers are looking for. And because of that, you have these trends like KOCs, you have these trends like more healthy food, more awareness, local buying, you have social commerce, social retail, all these trends popping up. That was about consumers. So this was this week's Pascal's China Lens on the consumer trends for 2021 in China that I foresee will happen. What we should remember is it's about purpose, it's about trust, it's about awareness and about meaning that consumers are looking for. And so as brands, foreign brands, Western brands, when we want to address the Chinese market, we should look at localizing and understanding the culture and how China is changing. Now, next week I'm going to talk about business trends in China and innovation and technology. So share this video with other people if you can, because then they will also be able to see what is really happening with the trends in China next year.